Because we're going to talk about something that happened recently on the most recent edition of the Women's Hockey Report, which you can find on the Locked on AHL podcast feed, both on YouTube and the podcast. We check it out on YouTube. We watch it on YouTube every Saturday. And in the most recent episode, they were talking about, obviously, schedules coming out, and they also picked up something really interesting that one of the general managers mentioned, that he had actually pitched to the league. And I would talk about that, because this, for me, just, I'm in the wrong jersey. I should be wearing a Barracuda jersey today, because this just gives me nasty flashbacks to 2021, when the Pacific Division, the AHL, had a play-in as part of their playoff tournament to crown their division champion. I'm going to give you the backstory to that in a moment. But let's just go through it first, and then we'll hop back to that. That's starting again soon, isn't it? Should be. Either this week or next week. I think AHL season will start again. I've got my opening... No, I know you two have already had your opening night. I've got my opening night tonight. Hold on. So, it was the York Sirens General Manager. Pascal Dost, who has suggested it, and he actually did say that he had actually pitched this to the PWHL to do a kind of take over tour style playing involving more teams in the World Cup playoffs. Because now, at the time of recording this episode, we do not know the situation of players, which I think is probably smart, given how last season, when we had the schedules drop, the league put a date of May the 6th, and then it got to the last week of regular season, they actually confirmed that it was going to be May the 7th. Yeah, but that is largely due to the fact, obviously, you have to work out which venues are going to be in play for the World Cup playoffs. And so, yes, because obviously, if you go back to last season, Laurel Rocket were in play, the Minnesota Wild were in play. Yeah, and that also mucked things up there. But the Big 12 were the only team last year's playoffs that did not get to have their logo on centre ice. Which is a shame, but it's understandable, given how the way it works with the situation with the PWHL. So I think it's probably smart not to announce playoffs until you get closer to playoffs. So I think when we get to April, that is when we need to get information about playoffs. Yeah. Or end of March. Okay, end of March earliest, but April latest. Yeah. So with, like, say, 5 or 6 weeks to go in the regular season, that's when we get the big up parts. Yeah. I'd be fine with that. Yeah. So he was suggesting you have 7 teams go to the playoffs. So you'd have the top 3 automatically get buys to the playoffs, and then the next 4, so that would be the first, that would be the 4th place team, 5th place team, 6th place team, 7th place team in the standings, would then take part in a play-in tournament in a neutral site. So kind of like a take-up-a-tour style situation. Straight away I'm saying no to that because of the Barracuda situation. So, right, can you just remind us the backstory? Yeah, and then we can then give our thoughts. So in the 2020-21 season, which was the first season back from COVID in the AHL, the divisions were given the opportunity to choose if they want to have a playoff tournament to crown their division champion, or just do it by points percentage. Now, the Atlantic, the Central, and the North divisions all chose to go by points percentage. My division, which is the Pacific Division, we chose to do a playoff tournament because at that time, the AHL divisions played different games. It depended on each division, and we played the least amount of games. So we kind of thought we should have more games. And I had no problem with the playoff tournament. It's just the way it executed. Because for the start, they had this play-in tournament where the top three, so that was Henderson, Bakersfield, San Diego, they got byes. And then you had me, Tucson, Colorado, Ontario, all battled out in a little play-in tournament. Where was it? It was in Irvine, California. It was the 5-point arena in Irvine. It would be straightforward. You'd have you'd have 3 games, 2 called like semi-finals and the final. And I just thought, I remember the time thinking, that is outrageous because I went into the 4th seed, therefore I thought I should have had the right to get playoffs regardless. Why have I got to fight off Colorado, Ontario, and Tucson just to get in when that right should be mine? You know, and I remember saying something, why not just do the top seed gets the bye and everyone else plays? Then it'd be fine. No. And actually going into that playing tournament, really the Barracuda and the Eagles were the only 2 teams that really were competitive in that play-in. So, and we only just narrowly beat Colorado in that play-in to get that 4th spot, and then we'd go on to face Henderson in the semi-final, which was a best of 3. The semi-final and the final were both best of 3. So it was a flash tournament. It was dominant. I think like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It was. It finished by the end of May, so it was a quick 2-3 week tournament. No, I just did not like it, and I just thought it made no sense to me. What me at all? Okay, yes, all the division got to take part, but the fact you gave 3 byes already, and you only gave the rest of the teams bye for 1 spot, it just didn't seem fair. I mean, have the number 1 seed go through. That was bye. Let everyone else play. You know. I just don't like the idea of a play-in tournament. I just don't, because the way the league does it, they give too many byes, and it limits the opportunity for the other teams involved to get a sniff at the chance of having playoffs. You know, and did this go on your record? This did go on teams' records as a playoff tournament. So technically, last year was our first time since 2021 with playoffs, but technically, in terms of the Cold Cup playoffs, it was our first time since 2019. I did not, in terms of streaks, I did not count 2021 as part of our streaks because that was a division playoff rather than the actual Cold Cup playoff. So I just think, so for me, I've got experience of this, and I just think, no, I do not like the idea of a play-in tournament at all. Because it's never fair. It's never fair in terms of how many teams have to compete in it, or who doesn't. It always just ends up kind of a bit sort of lopsided. Because in that year, Tucson and Ontario were not competitive. It really should have been a straightforward fight between me and Colorado, and that would have been fine. You could have easily have done it as a best of 3 between me and Colorado to get the last spot. That would have been fine. But no, they were determined to make all the division involved. So what about you two? I just think no. No. I mean, come on, seriously. So you're thinking all but 1 team gets to go to playoffs? What's the point in that? Especially if there's the goal plan online as well to think of. Exactly. Just like, no. I just think no. I mean, to do it in a neutral site venue would be great. Well, I've always said, I know this has been shot down plenty of times, I've always said that you should maybe do the Stanley Cup final in a neutral site arena. That's because I feel that fans in the AHL aren't that really respectable when it comes to the Stanley Cup being awarded. And I have got evidence of that. There have been times where I've seen the Stanley Cup being awarded. You see Guy Burns in the shot. He's gearing up ready for the presentation to get the cap over. And then behind him, you can see fans being like, boo! It's just like, no. And that's the difference between the PHL and the AHL. The PHL, we respect everybody. Okay, we let our teams have their moments. The NHL, it's literally territorial. So I've always felt that the Stanley Cup Bar should be held in a neutral site venue. Then you've got less chance of unruly fans because you know that we're not in the bar of one of the two finalists. And so, yeah. Do you remember what year that was? Nope. But I know it's happened plenty of times in the past. Yeah. That's why in a way, that's kind of why I did like the bubble in 2020, because it was going to be a neutral site, and you knew no fans involved. It just meant, right, we can have a very respectable Stanley Cup presentation. The problem was, it was 2020, and I wasn't really in the mood for hockey in 2020. Let's be clear that way. You weren't really in the mood for baseball in 2020 either. No, but I got through it. I got through it. Oh my god. The cutouts. What were MLB thinking? The cutouts. The bands. That was just like, really? Are we that desperate? Are you really that desperate? You really can't play an empty barn? You need to have cutouts there? I mean, it did provide some very hilarious footage of Fanatic. Guess it. And this, of course, was before it was a Billy. This was a Fanatic game, very sort of frisky with the cardboard cutouts. But then again, he's got no fans. What's he supposed... The fact you've dragged him out, what's he supposed to do? Let him rock about. But, yeah, they were quite distracting in that year. Yeah, I've always felt I'll always stand by it. I might even do a triple bid on it. Just to at least I made my case. I always feel the Stanley Cup should be in a neutral site venue, but I know that's never going to happen. That's always going to get shot down. They do it for the Super Bowl, and that has no problems. Yeah, but we all know the Super Bowl is one of the biggest global events in sports. It's watched by literally anybody and everybody. Whereas the Stanley Cup Final is only really watched by people who watch hockey. Let's be honest. He's got a point. Yeah, Benedict has got a point. Yeah. What I think is really interesting is the fact the person who's pitched this... I know, you said this before we came on the air. So go on, here's your spotlight. Go for it now. I mean, it's really interesting. The person who suggested this is the general manager of the team who has yet to see playoffs amongst the inaugural 6 teams. Yup. Absolutely. So I think that's very interesting. If it came from, say, I don't know, the Sectors or the Charge, fair dues, because they could think, oh, we need to throw out. But the fact, and of course, they've had playoff success. They have! Don't give me that look. I think she's refer to just the Sectors. They went 2-0 up in the first year. But no, but I think because it's the person that's not had his team go to the playoffs yet, I mean, it's interesting. And you could argue, is he trying to fiddle the system so that someone's got a bad chance to qualify? Because under his system, they would, unless they were part of the league again. Oh, they can't 3 years in a row. No, they can't. No, surely they can't. Surely they can't. Right, well, here's your pick. No! Pluto! You like our system is shaming! Who's your pick? Going into the season? To be bottom? Boston. I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say Boston because of the coach situation. And, well, that, and given what they lost in the expansion process. If Toronto had made a coaching change as well, I would have gone to Toronto. But, yeah, I think Boston or Toronto are likely to be compete goal plan. But Boston, I think, will definitely be goal plan territory, whereas Toronto can maybe scrap the playoffs. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. Well, they have got Natalie Spooner back healthy this year, so that might make a difference there. Yeah. Right, I just think it's very interesting. The person pitching it is the person whose team is yet to see playoffs. And yet, Pascal has actually made a lot of work to try and get his team competitive. Yeah, I mean, you look at the New York's draft class the last 2 years. On paper, that should be a roster contending for playoffs. And if we go back to the start of last season, the Sirens actually did start strong. It was kind of when we got to the 2025 portion of last season, and they started having those injuries. That's when it all got too much, and that's when they broke under cracked under the pressure. Yeah, and it was kind of coming out of the Rugby series. That's when it all started to unravel, and you just thought, oh god, here we go again. And could it be worse than last year? But actually, it wasn't as bad as last year as we all thought, because they got more points, they had more wins, and technically, they weren't mathematically eliminated coming out of the World Championships, but realistically, it just took one more win from somebody else, and you were done for. And that's exactly what happened, because I think it was Boston got the points needed to then be the ones to knock them out. It was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice to put how, yeah, the GM of the team is yet to see playoffs is the one suggesting this. That just sounds fishy. That sounds fishy. So what would you think? Right, so I have no problem if you want to do a qualification round. Like, obviously, we saw the bubble year in 2020 VHL. But at a playing tournament, nah, I don't like the sound of it. Because how would it work? Would it be, well, if it's the next 4 teams, so the 4th place team, 5th place team, 6th place, 7th place team, you could easily do what the AHL did, which you'd have 2 semi-finals, and then those 2 winners play the final, winner of that gets the last spot, and then we go straight to playoffs. That could be how you could do it. Yeah. But I just think, nah, I just don't. What are you two thoughts of a preliminary round? Because if we go back to the AHL, because obviously in 2022, the AHL, and I loved this, the AHL expanded the Calder Cup playoffs from 16 to 23 teams, which meant you had more teams getting opportunities to at least contend for playoffs. And the way it works is that in each division gets a certain amount of buys. My division only gets 1 bye because we've got 10 teams. Yeah, your division is its own separate league. Yeah, Pacific Coast League. Yeah, that's what we should be called. Yeah, we only get 1 bye. I think, off the top of my head, the North and Central divisions get 2 byes, and I think the Atlantic division gets 3 byes. I think that's how it works. And the preliminary round, it's a best of 3. All 3 games get hosted in the bar of the team that's the highest seed. So if we take 2025, I was 6th in the league. I was 6th in the league's Pacific Division. Ontario were 3rd in the league's Pacific Division. That meant Ontario got to have all 3 home games in that best of 3 round, but we didn't go to game 3 because I won both games outright. So we didn't go to game 3. But yeah, that's how it worked. That I would like to see them explore. If we get to those numbers, so if we get to like say 28, 30 teams, that I'd like to explore. But I just think, a preliminary round would be fine if it's a straightforward best of 3, you knock 1 out. But a play-in, nah. I just think, nah. And for this season, nah. No. Well, it's interesting how we don't know right now. I mean, we've got our schedules, but we don't currently know. And I think it was like this in the inaugural season. Wasn't it? We didn't get we did. Yeah, the inaugural season we didn't get playoffs till well into the season. Yeah, so it's basically the inaugural season all over again. Now, I don't think the league this year would change the playoff format. I can't see a reason to do that with 8 teams. Because this year you've got a straightforward, right, half can make playoffs, half won't. And that other half will have to just fight for the goal plan. That's the way I see it. But maybe when we get to, say, 10 teams or 12 teams, that's where you look at then expanding the playoffs. Yeah, but that'd be straightforward, because it would be 8 teams go through, quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, bam, down. You made that sound so easy! You did! You made that sound so easy! Look at this. You just do what a lot of European leagues do. Yes. Well, to a certain degree, yes. Yes, because in European leagues, you have the quarterfinals in the team's respective bars, and then you would take the semis and the finals out on a neutral venue for the weekend. That's how it works in European leagues. That's something the American leagues can look at doing, but it's not going to happen. Because people would then just kick up a fuss. They would, yeah. No, but I can't see a reason why this year you mess about the playoffs just because there's 2 new teams in. Nah. Why not wait until you get these 4 new franchises that you want to bring in within the next 2 to 3 years? Yeah. Why wait till you've got those 4 set up? Then you look at messing with the playoff format. Yeah. Because the local player format actually has worked well for the best. Yeah. You could debate, should we make it a best of 7 compared to a best of 5? I really don't know how we would cope with a best of 7. I know! Oh, Jesus Christ. Can you imagine that a playoff Montreal would play a best of 7 series? I know, right? But it could happen one day. It could. Yeah, it could one day. But right now, we're just sticking where we are. We're happy with what we've got right now, aren't we? Yeah. Let's not rock the boat just yet. Let's not rock the boat. I mean, you're only in year 3 now. So let's not rock the boat just yet. No. Let's just try to keep the ship steady. Yeah. But playoffs is definitely one thing that you would need to look at, maybe tweaking or changing in a few years' time. Yeah. When you have more teams in the league. Right now it's fine. Yeah. But no. I think Pascal's suggestion of this play-in. No. Because if we are going to have if you get a position where only one team to make the playoffs, then what's the point during a regular season? Yeah, exactly. What's the point during a regular season? You've got to have something. In the regular season, you have to have something to fight for, even if you mathematically aren't able to fight for it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think no. I just think no. Because then basically that will mean the last place team would get the goal plan by default, and that's not how the goal plan's supposed to work. No, it's not. No. Is he really just thinking, I've had enough of my team not making playoffs, I've drafted really well the last 2 years, I need to come up with a way to get my team to playoffs? Yep. That's clearly what he's done. Well then, go and make these moves. We know full well, drafting a great draft class alone is not enough to get a good, solid roster to get the playoffs. And a good example of that is the big blockbuster trade that the Sectors and the Charge did on New Year's Eve. Yeah. When Toronto got Darryl Watts, Ottawa got Jocelyn the Rock, and look what happened! Yeah, look what happened. Ottawa, out of nowhere, became a contender to make playoffs, and then took down Montreal in quite easy fashion. Yeah. So, there you go. You need to have these and also, look at what we did last season. We got Sophie Jake from Boston. Look what that made. Yeah. It's drafting alone. Drafting a good solid class alone is not enough if you want to win a championship. If you want to win a championship, you've got to, during the season, work out, right, what pieces am I missing? I go out and find them. If they're there, you give whatever you need to give to make that trade happen. Whatever it costs. Because what I love about some of the big trades we've seen in the PWHL the last years is how general managers have not been afraid to give up big fish to get what they want. Absolutely. Because I still in the NHL, we see a lot of trades where people are scared to make the big moves to get what they want because they're not prepared to give up, because they know what they would need to give up, but they're not prepared to do it. The PWHL, we've seen us do it, we've seen Boston do it, we've seen Ottawa do it, we've seen Toronto do it, where we want something that we know can help our team, but we have to then give something in return, and we've done that. Because obviously we gave it to start to Paddy. Yeah. Actually, we did quite well to start the season with us, she was. But look at the bigger picture, it worked out for the best. Yeah. So that's why I love how when we hear trade appearance, I love how certain general managers are going out there and they're not afraid to give up something in order to get something in return. It's worked well. It's worked well. And of course, Toronto did protect Darryl Watts in the expansion process. We thought was a stupid move, but clearly they thought otherwise. So they must think he's got potential, but we'll see. Did Ottawa keep the Rock? I don't know. I can't remember. There's been so much creation in Ottawa, I've lost track. Alright, yeah. No. So play-in, no. For me, that's the AHL just literally scarred me from a play-in. It really did, because I just thought it was a stupid idea. I just didn't see the point of it, especially when I kind of thought that playoff spot should have been mine anyways. Because I ended those standings as the 4th place team, which back in those days would have been, because before we had the expanded playoffs, it was the top 4 in each division would go through. So I kind of felt I had that right by default. Why have I then got to fight off these lesser teams? No offense, to some. But I kind of thought that should be mine. Yeah. So let it be mine. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, yeah, yes, yeah. Look, playing, no. I wouldn't have a problem if the league wanted to look at what the NHL does a preliminary round, but that you would need to have 30 teams minimum to do it. You need that minimum. But that's years away. But, it does actually now open the conversation of what are we going to do in the playoffs, especially when more teams are added in the mix, because the league is so determined to expand fast and hard. Yeah. Were you going? I was going to pause because I thought, oh my god, I knew exactly before you said that. I knew exactly what expression you were going to use, right? And I thought, right, do I need to pause to kill the euphemism, or should I let him roll it? But I'll let him roll it. Yeah, because it actually is correct, you know. I mean, the fact that we're now getting reports that the league is now thinking, oh, we could add 4 teams in this next year. It's like, no, yeah, no, maybe go slow. Yeah, maybe go start to the action. We've already been through this. We've already been through it. There's only one sexual gesture I know, and that's just hit me in the face with it. Calm down, that was Mr. Whippy. It's always Mr. Whippy every time. I thought I knew you was going to go there, but go there. Now you just did the gesture, and I'm sitting still, look pretty. Oh, she just quoted the song! She just quoted the song! Pitch Perfect 3. She just quoted the song. Well, you know the saying, lady, boys will be boys. Yes, I do know. But no, he's right. We are looking at expanding at a very fast rate. Now, because the markets are there and the talent's there, it's not a problem. No. If it's the other way around, then yeah. Right. But I think to finish off, can we just agree that Pascal has actually opened the conversation that's going to be had? It's just, he's done it for selfish gains. Because he wants the Sirens to get the playoffs. He wants that. And he feels they should be playoffs. But is he making the moves to do that? I don't think so. You've drafted well these last 2 years, but you've not gone out there to then get the moves you need to then really push for it. So I think when we look at trades, I think we look at the Sirens, this upcoming season, see are they going to make any to really get the pieces they need to then push. So it's an interesting conversation. I think we need to have a conversation about what we'd like to see the playoffs happen in the future, but that's not for now. But playing, no. Just no. No to the play-in. No to the play-in. No to the play-in. Yeah. So it was interesting that got brought up on the women's hockey report because it was mostly about schedules. Then while the host then brought it in, I was like, I'm not sure I felt like that. I thought, should we do that? It's like we gotta, because I've got thoughts on that. Well, you George have got the experience of playing, because you and Hatterput are the members of the pack that follow your AHL team. Yeah. So you've got the experience. Yeah. So you've got. It was terrible to watch, but at the same time, I'm like, well, it means my brother could get to have a couple of extra games, so I can't really argue that, especially as we were in the thick of COVID. I only just had my second jab at the time of that as well. Yes, yeah. No, hang on, that would have been May. So, when did you get your jabs again? February and April of 2021. They were my jabs. Well, May, I just recovered from it. Yes, end of May is when I think towards the end of May was end of my recovery from my jabs. because I had to have recovery time. He did. After both of my COVID jabs, I had to have recovery time because I was hit by side effects on both times. Not that I was warned about that. Not that I was warned about that. But I had recovery time. So with my second one, we pushed it so I could. We pushed it to, I think it was kind of like end of April. Because I think they tried to get me during Easter. I was like, So we pushed it to end of April. Of course I was going to get both my jabs, but I was like, but I kind of felt I hadn't had that. By the time when they wanted me to go to the second one, I felt I hadn't had recovered properly from the first one. So I thought, right, I'm going to try and push it for a week or two, and then go. So it's fine. It was all fine. It was all fine. I was going to get my jabs. It's just because after the first had so much bad side effects, I was like, I'm not. You did have to really push yourself to get the second one, because you knew for a while you're supposed to have 2 doses, and as soon as you got as soon as you got the second one, then you could go back to the West End. That was how you had to look at it. Yeah, that's how you had to look at it. But I just remember the time that playing tournament, it was a terrible experience, because it was like, what are we doing? No, given how the actual person itself were both best of 3s, it just felt like a silly flash tour, which in the end just felt pointless. We should have just done what the other divisions did, but still. But I was interested to hear on the Women's Hockey Report. It was interesting to hear. You can check that podcast on the Locked On AHL podcast feed, either by YouTube, which is what we do, or wherever you get your podcasts. Go check out this most recent episode they did. That was interesting. So no to play in. But maybe one day the conversation about what we do in playoffs needs to happen. It'd be a very interesting conversation, and that does indeed.